So welcome everyone to this session. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is James Bidwell. I am your moderator. My job is to catalyze a good discussion. So I am delighted to have fantastic people here to help me do that. I am the chair of two B Corps, Springwise, which is a global innovation community, which Justin runs. He will tell you more about that in a second. And also Reset, which is a strategy consultancy for innovation and sustainability. We are in the UK, so our timing is 2:40 in the afternoon. And we are going to talk today about innovating with purpose. So nothing more important than that as a topic. And I have fantastic people who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves. And Abigail has just had a glass of water, so I'm going to ask Abigail, please, to introduce yourself to this community.
My name is Abigail Stern, and I'm the founder and CEO of Matek, which is an outdoor apparel brand launched in 2018, creating technical and aesthetic styles for the whole family to live in all year round.
Fabulous. And where are you?
Based in California.
You're in California.
I'm normally based in California, but right now I'm in Telluride, Colorado.
Cool. I think we're the most international lab that you could ever have, and I'm going to emphasize that by asking Robert to introduce himself, please.
Yes, sure. My name is Robert Olsson. I'm a skier, designer, entrepreneur, and a lot of other things from Sweden. And I started a brand called Spektrum about 7 years ago with 3 friends. We do bio-based performance eyewear for snow sports and activities based around the mountain, basically. The brand is based in a ski resort in Sweden. All the founders are former ski or snowboard professionals, one way or the other. So we have a very strong connection to the mountain and have seen over the years, like firsthand, what's been going on with the environment. So we wanted to offer a better alternative to traditional plastics, which was very, very frequently used and still is, in especially the snow eyewear business. I mean, there's been a lot of things going on in the fashion eyewear industry with sustainability, but not so much in the performance side. So we wanted to change that and shift away from petroleum-based products, basically. So everything we do is mainly in bio-based materials where possible.
Fantastic. And, you know, it's so important that these industries that are really important industries are shifting through innovation to a more purposeful existence. So we'll come back to you a bit more. And we have to thank you a lot, Robert, for being here so late in the day in your time zone. So we're going to have to keep you excited to keep you staying awake late at night. So I moved to Justin, Justin actually put all this together in terms of inviting Abigail and Robert. And you're going to tell us why you did that and how you glue this conversation together, Justin.
Sure. Thanks, James. So yeah, I'm the editor of Springwise, and as James alluded to, so we're a global publication and platform, and we spot and publish innovations across all sectors, and we have a really big focus on solutions that drive positive and sustainable change, and that's why Abigail and Robert are with us, because these are two companies that we spotted recently and featured on our website and all of our platforms. So yeah, sports, we cover all sectors, but outdoor sports and recreation is an area that we keep very close tabs on. So personally, I joined Springwise in April 2019, and I've been a journalist my whole life. I spent 13 years at the New York Times, and Springwise itself has been with us for quite a few years. It started in 2002, and since then we've built up a really large database of over 10,000 innovations, again, across sector, across country, and really with a focus on sustainable innovation and purpose-driven innovation. And we also published some daily newsletters and weekly newsletters, and we just launched a new newsletter a few months ago called the Sustainable Source, which is a bi-weekly newsletter. So that's what we're up to, and I'm really, it's really a great opportunity to talk to people who we featured on our website face to face to get their stories and their firsthand accounts on how they approach their business and what their philosophy is. So I'm really excited that these two have joined us for this discussion.
Brilliant, Justin. Thank you. And more about Springwise later. So, like, we've got this fantastic title, Innovating with Purpose, which is either very meaningful or not that meaningful. It could, you know, I think it is meaningful, and we're all in mission-driven businesses here. But Robert, I mean, how did you get into this, and what's driving you to do this, and why is it so important from your perspective?
I mean, I don't see an alternative really from my point of view. I mean, it's things are happening in the world, and they are not to the positive. I think, you know, I often discuss this with my wife, who's also running a sustainable business, that anyone starting anything now should have that sort of approach, that it should have less impact on the planet and create a better alternative to what's been there before in terms of sustainability.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my general approach. And I managed to find a bunch of guys who was thinking the same. And we, like I said before, we've seen what's been happening. You know, it's been very evident in the high alpine environments that we spend a lot of time in, like glaciers are retracting. It's you know, weather is shifting, and snowfalls are either you know, way more in some places and way less in other places, and it's all over the place. So that was, you know, seeing and witnessing that was, of course, one important aspect of that whole thing.
And Robert, just for a second, do you viable this new sustainable kind of innovating path? I mean, do you find as a business, because one of the big things about this new space is it's like we love it, but it's lots of, you know, it's high risk for us entrepreneurs to create businesses in a more purposeful pace. And I can see a couple of fantastic B Corps joining us in the chat there. Thank you for joining. But it's a kind of new territory. How are you finding it from a commercial point of view?
Difficult, yeah, for sure. I mean, we are being judged by the same standard as, you know, any other eyewear brand out there. So we have to have what I like to call like the hygiene factors. We need to, you know, have great functionality, have to look great, great design. We have to have the right price. And on top of that, we have to add like these new materials that are often, you know, harder to find, harder to come by, more expensive, hard to convince factories and suppliers to use, because they're not used to handling that in their machine parks. So it's a lot of hurdles to come over, and of course, you know, the margins are suffering a bit from that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a tough start. We'll talk more, but Abigail, give us a perspective from your point of view. How are you finding customers and viability of your business in taking a more sustainable approach?
I think that there's a lot of reliance on just like marketing or getting across any other information to the consumer. You just have to repeat yourself all the time, and maybe the 5th time or the 10th time they'll actually read what you're saying or hear what you're saying. And so there's a lot of education involved in what you're doing. You know, like I could say this is dead stock fabric, but people don't know what dead stock fabric is, or they kind of know and then they don't know. So you just have to keep like kind of being the annoying person that's just keeps nagging you about the same stuff. and throwing the information out there. But I think I agree with Robert that, you know, the consumer doesn't want to hear about all the hard stuff going on how you got to that material, that I had to convince my factory, I had to source it all myself, I had to make a custom development. So those aren't the things that you're going to keep sharing. But, you know, there is part of the journey that I think the consumer does enjoy hearing, whether it's behind the scenes, look at the factory, or the, you know, it is cool to make a custom fabric. So like maybe push the cool factor, and then that's how you get them in, and then hit them with all the facts about what this material is actually made in. But it is important because obviously, you know, we're trying to problem solve for a product, and the situations you find yourself in to use that product, but then also the larger problem solve of, you know, with this product, how you can impact the world and where we're going.
Yeah, no, it's you know, fantastic to see the power of commitment of entrepreneurs like both of you. And you know, Springwise is really there to give oxygen to entrepreneurs who are changing the world for better. So it's so powerful to be able to tell your story a little bit and hear it directly, as well as, you know, through our channels. I mean, my perspective is that we work a lot with big companies to help them figure out sustainability and create sustainability strategies. And I'm seeing, certainly in the UK and Europe, and I think we may be slightly ahead of the US in this, but that could be controversial. But we're seeing the enlightened CEOs are saying, and investors are beginning now to change and beginning to understand that not only are consumers kind of terrified of climate change and don't know what to do, and do understand that they're part of the problem. And also the staff of these big companies who are generally in their, you know, the mass are kind of a bit younger, maybe in their 20s and 30s. And they're saying, look, I don't want to work for a company that's trashing the planet. And that is then driving a shift, you know, allows us to unlock really focused sustainability strategies, you know, to change bigger companies. And one of our big things that we think about is, how do you connect with innovators? So how do you work as your small companies with bigger companies who are more established, who've got distribution and financing and all of that, but know they need to innovate with purpose and innovate to create better solutions which customers, you know, can afford, and also which have the marketing behind them. And I think this kind of event at Sea Change is a really powerful way of beginning that conversation. I'm not sure if there are any massive companies around, but hopefully the big guys are here as well, listening to this. So Justin, what other stuff are you seeing across the Springwise the Springwise network? Give us, you know, make us excited about some stuff you're seeing. Give us hope. And then I'm going to ask, while you're doing that, I'm thinking about that question from left field. Just please in the chat ask questions, anyone who's interested to have a specific question.
Yeah, sure thing. So what we're seeing in this space really is a really big focus on materials and how those are being used, sustainable materials, innovative technology to actually create these products using, you know, natural processes. And that's, of course, what sort of caught our attention to Spektrum initially, for their using, you know, bioplastics to create things like really high-end skiing goggles. And I know Matek, of course, is also using sustainable processes to make its fabric. And of course, we can let them talk a bit more about that. But we're seeing a lot of innovations in the sort of a similar vein as far as creating things that normally you couldn't do in a sustainable way, especially regarding sort of high performance sports apparel and sports gear. Another one we saw recently was Winder Alpine, and I know they're actually part of this event, taking part in another panel for this event, and we also featured them recently. They've figured out a way to work with algae to actually create high performance lightweight skis. And another group in Australia that we featured recently is using aerospace technology to turn carbon fiber waste into surfboards. So it's just like so exciting to see all of these type of things coming out of sustainable processes, and that seems to be the companies that have been able to figure out how to do it in a cost-effective way are the ones who are sort of rising above the others at the moment. And again, I think the key with sports and areas that rely on high performance is, you know, a few years ago that may have been a bit of an excuse to use. You know, we want to make really high quality, high performance gear, but you know, at the moment there aren't ways to do it in a sustainable, eco-friendly way. But what we're seeing now is that it is possible. We have a lot of places showing examples of that. So, you know, that's what's really exciting to me, is that, you know, things a few years ago that may have seemed impossible to actually do using this new technology that it really is sustainable. It's actually being done now. I think I'm just grateful that we have some of these brands kind of paving the way.
Yeah. So I think Flip Brown in the chat has said a great comment, which is, you know, ideas may change thinking, but emotions are the most powerful means to change behaviors. And the question is, you know, when is the tipping point coming? And I think on Springwise, what we see is we see evidence that there is definitely opportunity out there, and there are amazing entrepreneurs kind of coming up with these ideas. And indeed, our audience engagement has grown rapidly through COVID, as is not maybe surprising because of the pandemic, but also because of our subject matter. So, I mean, one of the things that I think is also important is, and I'm a bit older than you guys, but I have three daughters and two stepsons, and looking at the next generations coming through, and this whole kind of idea of how education needs to change in order for us to address climate change as humanity. And I thought I might just dive into the education conversation, since Robert was talking to us about the Green School in Bali, and just see whether, you know, what are you thinking about that? What is each of us thinking? I know Justin's got little Teddy, who's pretty small. He's only about 2, but, you know, are we gonna set ourselves up and set this planet up for our next generation, or are we gonna leave it in a mess? Robert.
Yeah, we better hurry up, right? It's
right.
We don't have a lot of time, so that's, you know, one of the reasons I'm here with my family in Bali and based here at the moment, because we have, for one, we have the Green School, which is a great place, trying to shape the sort of green leaders for the future, and having really interesting ways of approaching teaching and really doing things with education in a new way that I think is really, really exciting. And my kids are a little bit too small yet to be going there, so we have them in another place. But there's a lot of super interesting projects around sustainability, because I think of Green School, and also because of maybe the spiritual side of Bali has been attracting a lot of people that are maybe open to this kind of ideas for quite a few years. So it's really a good place to be, to sort of shift your thinking if you're open to that. And you know, that's one of the reasons we want our kids to grow up here, at least partially, to be part of that sort of movement and this society.
Brilliant. And Abigail, do you have anything that you would like to add to that in terms of how education, you know, affects you and your business?
Yeah, I mean, to go back to your sharing information, and it's part of educating. And I've been to the Green School, because my aunt and uncle and cousin moved there. And I mean, you just from taking the tour, you learn from the kids. They're like, they make it so accessible to be. It's not like you're in a physics class and it's like the entry level is if you're good at math or if you're good at science or whatever it is. But they just make it so, my little cousin that was in 9th grade was explaining me why he was creating an eraser made out of, you know, a material that came out of like sap from a tree, and he was teaching me all that about how normal erasers aren't good for the world and all that. So I think that, yeah, those kind of programs, I mean, I don't see why that couldn't work in America or outside of Bali, but it's truly like if you start that young, I don't see how the future couldn't be affected by it, because it's just like that education is built into your everyday. It's not built from a personal interest or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think my kids go to a sort of the green school of the UK. It's called Bidwell, and it's very, it's all about hand, heart, and head. So there's lots of work, outdoor work, and kind of engagement with nature, and that appreciation of nature, which is so, so important. And I think all of us involved in, you know, the outdoors industry effectively, and, you know, there's reasons why we pick to be involved in this space, appreciate maybe more than others the power of nature, the importance of nature as the solution. And actually the reason we became involved in this was because of our involvement with 1% for the Planet. So we should give them a little shout out. So I know Kate Williams, the CEO, who's a good friend of mine, is talking today. And I think even Yvonne Chouinard is, or has been, or is talking. And of course, he's my business hero, as well as provider of many of my kit. But, you know, this kind of idea of encouraging activism through 1% for the Planet, and we chair the 1% for the Planet steering group in the UK, and we're almost growing as fast as the US now. So it's really exciting to see that kind of, you know, it's education of a different sort, but the importance of proactive engagement with activist organizations to, you know, fix it. So I just want to ask Justin, you know, what's your perspective on that, the kind of the things that we've been just talking about, the education, the kind of 1% for the Planet, and then I'm going to get back to the second.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, education is another sector we track pretty closely, and you know, we see a lot of things as far as sustainable development of schools and the built environment, but we've come across the idea, you know, of the actual education about sustainability and about the climate crisis and how important that is too. And that I think that sometimes gets overlooked with there's so many other things going on and so many other, you know, problems to address. But I do think that's a big part of it. And also access to education is really a big part of, in many regions of the world, it's a really big problem, and we've also been paying a lot of attention to that, how to increase accessibility to education. So I think there's a lot of different aspects to that issue, but it's something we're tracking.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. So look, innovating with purpose, kind of the topic of what we have. Can you give us some advice? I'm going to go to Abigail first. How do you do it? You know, what's the technique? What can we tell people who are listening in about how to innovate with purpose, Abigail, from your experience?
Yeah, I think that innovating with purpose, it can be down to just educating them on the material choices and the construction choices that have to do with that, which is all innovation. My background's in technical design and product development, so designing and sourcing is what leads the problem solving in the performance and the technicality of the garment and the function is all what leads my design. So even just educating people on that of, oh, I made this seam here, not there, yeah, it looks cool, but also because it helps with consumption at the factory, and this material, and you know, all of the styles share the same materials because that's also better for consumption. And I have to buy, as a brand, have to buy a certain minimum in this material, and it's coming from here or there. And so that kind of education for the innovation, I think, is super important. But then there's also what I think also falls under that question you asked is how, important to the brand, and even sharing all of education on different subjects is, I'm a small brand, but there's a widget on Shopify that I incorporate in my site that gives a 5% of each sale to a different nonprofit, and I have information on the nonprofit on the website. of which one we're giving to that month. And we're a partner of Protect Our Winters. So if you go to this site, you can go click there and go to their site and learn more. And so it's like all these different ways of sharing information that maybe they don't click, but maybe they do, or maybe they, you know, the 10th time again that you say it, they listen to you. So, and maybe it sparks something in them that can either be a hobby or a passion project, or their career, or something that, you know, you led them to just from being a little brand on the internet they wanted to buy a neck gaiter from. So I think even the small
Brilliant.
things like sharing the fabric information and where you're giving to and what's important to you as a brand, and kind of making the brand its person with a personality in their own, that they have things that care about, really is important to share with the customer.
That's great, Abigail. And I think you bring up a really important point, which is collaboration. And, you know, we've been so used, particularly, I'm going to say in the United States, sorry about that, but I have worked for American companies, but, you know, really just being obsessed with money and investors and Wall Street and Silicon Valley and all this other stuff that everyone thinks is the definition of success. And actually, in order to solve climate change and to do the right thing, we need to collaborate to shift industries together. And that may be less competitive, but it's the right thing to do. So it's a it's a very interesting theme. But Robert, your guidance your tips to the audience on how you might think about how to innovate with purpose, and what are the kind of key ingredients?
I think we're onto something with knowledge, because, you know, it's about information, about knowledge, about education. And I mean, for us starting out, it was, you know, a bunch of guys who really, you know, liked skiing and snowboarding and liked the mountains, and we had an idea about this product that we wanted to make, and, you know, we were started to talking to people and doing research, and I guess, you know, that's what you need to do. And luckily we came across fantastic people, and we had, you know, opportunity to be part of different programs that were having this, that didn't have a sustainability focus, but we sort of got into that program and shifted the focus towards sustainability, because it was more about general sort of innovation and development.
Yeah.
So we got funded to go into that program, and sort of came with a sustainability approach that wasn't there, and we managed to get all these scientists and professors to actually start looking at you know, options for petroleum-based plastics.
Yeah.
And that led us to you know, finding great materials that were better for the environment, and also had, you know, from certain aspects, better performance than conventional materials. So that was really, you know, for us, that was key, I think, to get into these programs and meeting people that obviously know a lot more about materials and material development than we do, because we're not scientists, so we needed that support. We just had the idea of where we wanted to go with our product.
Brilliant. And Justin, you're reviewing like 100 innovations a day and publishing only 3.
Yeah.
So I know you've got a busy time, but how do you know, what do you see, and what tips from that can you give the audience and here today? What is the key to being published on Springwise? Because you have to envisage that it's that's where the successful ones are.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think what we look for really is, we look for things that they don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel, as far as, doing something that's going to create a sustainable solution to an existing problem. But we also, the gold standard for us is something that really is new and innovative and hasn't been seen before. but actually, it feels, I feel a change even from when I started in 2019 with Springwise till now, where there's just, there's a flood of innovations that seem extremely promising. And a lot of it has to do with really going back to the material technology and just being people proving that you can do incredible things, and also along with that, and in sort of ways that aren't, they're actually cost effective, and sometimes they're even more cost effective, these sustainable processes. So, I mean, I'm just sort of, just in my short time, a couple of years focused on this area, I've seen a huge shift. It used to take a lot longer to find these really inspiring ideas. And now it's sort of, there's so many more to choose from. And I mean, the challenge for us is to really pick the ones that we think really will have a big impact. And also because it's sort of a bit of a trendy thing at the moment to push your sustainable agenda. There's a bit more, we're doing a bit more detective work as far as greenwashing goes, and to make sure that companies are really, doing these things the right way. But overall, it's very encouraging, and I think my hope is always, like you said, like hoping that some of the bigger companies are watching us. Like our whole point is really to identify ideas that have been proven to be successful, maybe on a smaller scale, and the ultimate hope is that something similar can be adopted by bigger companies, or they can be inspired to do these things on a wider scale, because the more, like you said, it's all about collaboration and partnerships, and the more we can get people who have a bigger reach to do similar things that are for the good, the bigger impact it'll be.
Brilliant, Justin, thanks. Now, look, I'm really excited. Someone's disagreed with me in the chat, which is fantastic. But I'm going to give you a warning. We have 15 minutes left, and I'm going to open up to Q&A in a couple of minutes. So, Michael Jacobs, thank you very much for disagreeing with me. And you disagreed with James's remark that sustainability and collaboration may be less competitive. There's a ton of market research demonstrating the opposite to be true. And I think your link probably goes to your company, but I didn't really mean that. So to clarify, I think the old school is that in the old days, it was like collaboration was bad news. And actually, I'm with you. And Justin's just made the point as well. Thank you for putting that in the chat. But I'm with you that, collaboration is basically the only way ahead. And consumers are not stupid, and they will get that, and they'll understand that. We do a lot of work in the fashion industry, and without a doubt, the way to reform the fashion industry, and you could say the same about food as well, I think, is that the big guns have to collaborate to make the transformation necessary. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. And there is a woeful lack of engagement from government in any of this. There is no coordination across the world in government, and that means that business play. And there are some great leaders who are global, who are having huge impacts. So I would quote Patagonia, I think Unilever, which is Anglo-Dutch, which is with Alan Jope, who's the CEO, who is really pushing it, the agenda of, B Corps and kind of business as a force for good. And I think we do need business, and that's why these sessions are so important. And I'm hoping and believing that many of the startups will kind of become the big businesses of the future, and I'm imagining that we will see many of them at this session, which is also fantastic. And as we know, with the digital world in which we live, businesses can scale pretty fast. So there is some hope, although there's a flip side to the social media coin, which we could go into, but that would be very controversial and probably get me thrown out of this. Look, has anyone got, if I'm opening up, I think Ruth, our very kind technical support person, really the leader of all of this, is going to open up to Q&A, which means that we should be able to, I think, see people. But in the meantime, has anyone in the audience got any questions they would like to ask your esteemed speakers today, or shall I keep going? And I may be not being able to see questions, so apologies for that. And maybe what I would do then is, I'm going to let maybe Abigail or Robert or Justin, have you got anything you want to ask? Okay, hold on. I've got one. I've got a question. Nick Neverisky, thank you. We've heard a lot about materials. How does energy play into your sustainability efforts? Robert.
That's, of course, a part of what we're looking at, because we're trying to be as holistic as we can, of course, about the whole product chain. And we just try to work with partners and suppliers that have a good transparency and can really tell us what they're doing, both in terms of energy and consumption, and how they reduce sort of the use of resources. But also we've had struggles with suppliers telling us where they are growing their crops that go into our product, and for us that's not really acceptable. So we move away from those suppliers and try to find the ones that are very open to sharing information. And I think the transparency and the open source thing that's sort of happening right now in perhaps still a small scale, but hopefully the companies sharing their innovation and their new technologies. I'm hoping they're going to be the thought leaders and sort of the beacons for others to follow, and not sit and protect their precious little invention and keep it from the world.
Thank you, Robert. Abigail, energy?
Yeah, I agree. It's, the same thing how Justin said he has to do a lot more homework on greenwashing of brands and what they actually mean by what they're doing. It's the same way with, I mean, 90% of my line is produced 15 minutes away from my office in Los Angeles. And then I source everything myself, so I know exactly where it's coming from, how it's being shipped to me. But in knowing, even having all the information, you still have to problem solve for, energy and emissions and offsetting all those things, even if it's just getting, the product to you or to the materials to the factory. It doesn't even have to do from how I'm getting it from me to the person that bought it off of my website. So, I mean, technology and, there's so many different nonprofits and organizations that can help even a tiny brand like me so easily access how to offset emissions, which, like, if I just had to go and figure out how to do it my own, I would not know how to do that. So I think that, the technology really helps with that. And then also just, being closer to the supply chain obviously always helps, knowing where everything's coming from by the time it gets to you, and then it gets to the factory or the consumer or wherever. So it all comes back down to the education and research.
And I think your point around local sourcing, which is highly relevant. I mean, very hard in more of a fashion or the kind of the industries that we're talking about, but absolutely mission critical in the food industry, for example. I'm confident. I'm hopeful that cities will change a lot, and we'll see cities with many less cars and many more gardens, and there will be vertical farming, and there will be food production in cities that is not full of pesticides, and the evolution of the way we think about space. And I think that could be one of the big post-pandemic opportunities. Don't know whether that'll happen, because it feels like everyone just wants to get on a plane and go on holiday again and get back to the round robin of health that we were in before. But I do think that, and again, I see it, and Justin and I working together see it amongst our teams, that we don't really want to be flogging in and out of offices every single day. We might go in 3 days a week. We may go on an electric bicycle rather than a kind of COVID infected tube train, or a car that that is belching out pollution. So again, we need government as well as business to help figure out some of those solutions. But the energy debate is, of course, one that is really important. We see that as when we work with big companies to help them on their sustainability strategies, the kind of the net zero. The net zero at the moment is the big kind of cry. There's lots of companies who say in the newspapers, I'm going net zero in 2030. And I call them up and say, okay, well, what's your plan? And they say, well, we haven't really got a plan, but we've said it because our investors wanted to, they thought that would be a good idea. And what they really mean is I won't be CEO by then because I will be retired and sitting on a beach with lots of money. And, the net zero kind of needs innovation to drive it. Innovation, and you were talking, Abigail, about the not-for-profits, which many of the best innovations come from not-for-profits, which is really exciting. So I think it's a debate we need to keep having together. So it's a great, thanks, Nick, for that question. And Justin, you're nodding there. Have you got something to add on the energy debate? Seaweed, algae,
mostly nodding because it's a good conversation. But no, I think going back, the examples we have show how you can sort of spend less energy creating certain materials. Even going back to the wind or alpine example, like you said, the algae and skis. What they're doing is they're replacing petroleum-based carbon with this new process, and that does save energy. But I think the challenge is for some of these, sometimes you have a great sort of innovation, but that's how do you adapt it on a wide scale that makes business sense for everybody as well. And that's where I think the collaboration has to come in, where you're working with people who might be able to help you take that great idea that works, but doing it on a larger scale might need some more expertise in certain areas. So I think that's what we really do. We try to highlight the how it can be done, and hope that we can connect these people, the innovators, to the right people to sort of really grow their idea.
Thanks, Justin. I've got a good question from Tabitha. And thank you very much, Flip, for saying to me that I hadn't, she's asked it twice and I haven't. Sorry, Tabitha. So the question is, and it's for Abigail and or Robert, how do you deal with, or have you dealt with, resistance when getting your innovations across? And how have you overcome this, and what are the best ways to change mindsets? So can you give some tips on changing mindsets, getting over innovation deniers? Abigail, do you want to start on that one? Give us an example of something tough that you've got over.
By innovations, do you mean like just the brand in general and the styles?
Yeah, I think on your journey, I think that's what the spirit of the question.
I mean, just to speak personally from Matek, I have, for the last 2.5 years in existence, I have not had a marketing budget. So it really is based on organic marketing and word of mouth. And so how do you deal with the resistance? I think there are always going to be these kind of trolls, especially in innovation and conversations about the climate. But sometimes you kind of just have to ignore them and go with the people that actually are down and are with it, because some people are not going to be convinced otherwise. And the best thing is just to stick with the people that do get it and help you spread the word. Because I don't know, I think the internet, and obviously if you have a huge marketing budget, and again, you can go hit that like repetition of getting the same idea out there 1 million times, and maybe by the millionth time someone gets it and they're converted. You kind of have to rely on just like the product and the brand, visuals and everything speaking for themselves, and then the true fans organically helping you grow it. Kind of like, especially in the outdoor industry, it's a industry that was based on word of mouth and recommendations on the trail or the chairlift of, oh, where did you get that? Oh, what's it made of? Like that, just in these little conversations that last, or platform. So I think there's always going to be resistance when something new happens. Time will definitely change that, and then word of mouth and everything, and just don't get discouraged by it, you know, keep doing it because you know what's true to your brand and your message, not because you can't convince every single person.
Robert, do you have anything to add to that very concise answer?
Yeah, maybe on a more internal level, I would say like it's one thing to do what we've done, like starting our own brand and sort of setting the rules for what that brand is going to be and do, and you know, philosophy-wise be about, and then the investors getting on board with that is sort of attracted, you know, by that idea. So you don't have to sell it, you know, oversell it that you might do in other. I've been a designer in outdoor wear, ski wear, that kind of stuff for bigger companies for a big portion of my life. And, you know, there's the resistance when you come to, you know, everybody says that, yeah, we need more sustainable materials in the collection this year. Fine, I go find them, I make the garment, and then when the final meeting comes, you know, they say, oh, but we're like, margins are 30 cents off on this product compared to last year. What did you do? Well, I made it sustainable the way you wanted, but no, we want the old margin. You know, that's been a discussion for 10 years, and that's been really frustrating. So in those cases, you need to be really smart about what you're doing and design the product better so you can actually meet the margin demand as well and get your sustainable materials in. So, you know, there's a lot of different, I think, situations which require different approaches to that problem. But unfortunately, money is often, you know, a hurdle to get over.
So let's hope that we see more money becoming more intelligent and more more focused on all this this agenda. So I think we're coming to the end of this wonderful moment together, and I just want to make sure in the spirit of helping you guys market yourselves a bit more, that everyone knows where to get you. Abigail has very kindly posted her Matek website in the chat. I don't know whether, Robert, you want to do that as well, but Justin has highlighted also the Springwise community, and please, if you see fantastic ideas that could be featured on Springwise, or you think you should be featured on Springwise, call us or send us an email, and also sign up to those amazing newsletters that come out every day, every week, or every 2 weeks for Sustainable Source. And Justin and his team put a lot of effort and energy into finding the most inspiring entrepreneurs on the planet. So it's a great source, and lots in the outdoor industry. For me, to conclude, this is so exciting to have these conversations. And as I've said before, I'm a bit older than you guys, and I've just found that we just have to get on and do it. And we have to beat through the door of resistance, and we have to innovate. We have to be true to ourselves. We have to get this agenda, right at the center of all business, all government, in order to fix the problem. But it is a massive, massive problem, and it's as we said earlier, those of us who love nature and love outdoors and love the life that we've created, particularly those of us living in the privileged Western world, we have a big job to hang on to that for our children and grandchildren. So final words from anyone, everyone, or just run through anything you want to say, or Twitter handle or anything like that, Abigail, or a point of view to sum up.
Thanks for including us in the conversation, and if anyone has any questions at all on anything on my website or what I spoke about, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Abigail. Robert, I'll let you go next, and before Justin.
Yeah, well, I can only second that. And like, yeah, if there are any questions, please reach out, and we'll do our best
Great,
to answer them. Yeah.
Justin, call to arms. Anything
Just
to say from your London?
If anyone's following us
point.
who has great ideas or are working on similar projects like Robert and Abigail, like it's my sole job in life is to promote these ideas and to help these companies succeed and promote the amazing sustainable innovation that we're seeing. So definitely reach out. There's contact forms at springwise.com. Get in touch. And otherwise, please subscribe to the newsletters.
Brilliant. Thank you. So my job then is just to close and say thank you to everyone listening. I think we've had a good audience and very engaged, which is nice, and lots of thank yous coming through. And thank you to Robert for staying up so late, much appreciated. Abigail for giving us a beautiful modeling of the of your lovely Dick, and Justin for shedding light on the world's global innovators, to Sea Change Sessions for putting this event on. And I understand there's another one coming up later in the summer, which is going to have more of an ocean theme, which I hope I'm allowed to talk about, but is really exciting because that is a whole other topic. And fix this. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.